Hi, I'm Gabby and I'm a wet on wet oil painter, and I am going to do a lesson today on sand. So I have my canvas ready, so let's go over and let's get going right away. So to start this little video out, I want to show you guys what I have going on this canvas first. This is a 16 by 20 white canvas, and then I have taken black acrylic and put it across here, and currently it's still drying. So while that's drying, I'm going to show you guys work on just white canvas, because there's sort of a couple different ways to do this, and it'll make sense as we get into this, what is easier and what's not. So let's talk a little bit about colors first. Sand can, be sort of wet, and it can reflect the colors that you have going on in the sky. Sand can come in a lot of different colors, I guess is my point. Anywhere from white sand to very colorful sand, to black sand, whether that's because of shadowing or on the rare occasion that you actually have a black sand beach. But colors that I like to use personally for doing sand are white, black, stuff like burnt umber and burnt sienna. I also like doing like flesh colored stuff, a little bit of, yellow ochre. So I guess there's kind of a range is my point. I am just pulling a palette and I'm just putting some paint on as I'm talking to you guys. This is some burnt sienna, yellow ochre, burnt umber, some black, and then I'm going to find something fleshy, and I'll put that on the palette too. When I first started oil painting, one of my biggest reservations to paint beaches and sort of seascapes was actually the sand. And then I took a chance, I did it, and it worked out just fine. So I got a couple more colors on my palette here. I got some white. This is called Cream, and it's just a Daler Rowney Simply. I use tons of different brands. This color up here is actually called Sand. It's made by, what do you call this stuff? Master's Touch. You can get that at Hobby Lobby. Anyway, so I have sort of sandy colors on here. And I think our black is actually dry now. So we'll start on the black. And I'm going to sort of section this off into different sort of bits of beaches. And I guess we'll kind of work our way forward. What brushes work good for sand? I like flat brushes and angle brushes. This one's an angle, and it is a Princeton Aspen, one of my favorites. I love these brushes. But you could do this with a bunch of different stuff. You could do it with a fan brush. It depends on kind of how thick you want it to be. I have a smaller angled brush, flat angled fan, whatever you want to use, but I like angle brushes to do this. So we need to picture that our water is here. Now that we have our water, we're going to start adding some sand. Now, if you have a beach that you start with black, and you can just lay down some black acrylic, a lot of times I'll just use really cheap black acrylic on my canvases, works just fine. But laying down black where your sand is going to be, indeed where your water is going to be as well, but definitely where your sand is, will make this sort of do a lot of the work for you. Because usually along the water, your sand is going to be darker because it's wet. And so I'm going to put some of that sand color paint on my brush, on this flat one. And this is what, flat but angled, right? This is what these angle brushes are good for. Okay, these lines are not straight across the beach. Okay, they're coming out from the sand, but they're not like big down angles, okay? They're gentle, sort of across. But you don't want to cover up all the black. And as you come forward, you can go from having your brush this direction, horizontal to sort of vertical, and thicken out those lines, and then just blend in your sand color. It's quite simple. If you wanted to sort of change up the look, you can bring in some other colors. Sometimes I'll do this where I lay like different colors over at sort of different angles, just to create like obvious depth in my sand. You can start with darker stuff, and then as you come away from it, you can add some lighter stuff as well. But sand is really basic, okay? Just the lighter you have it, away from it, and then the darker closer usually works really well. Even if you have the dark laid down, you could come back in with, like, say, a burnt umber. So that's what's on my brush right now. And you can just blend in that burnt umber. And it gives it a little bit more of a natural tone to it, because you don't want flat colors. I'm coming back in with a little bit of black so that right along the water it's even darker. and then it sort of blends its way out as I go away. Now you can do this with oil. You can also do this with acrylic. Obviously you're going to let your black dry first, and then you're going to layer over lighter colors. But it's about having it darker along the water, and then not big deep vertical lines, obviously, because we want it horizontal. If you bring them at a little bit of an angle, you can create slopes and stuff in your sand. Very simple. Now up here, I had purposely made this a really solid black along the water, and then up here I made it thinner, so that if I wanted to come in with stuff that's even closer, okay, by making it sort of sketchy behind, we have some, variance and some texture and stuff to the sand really easily. And then I'm just pulling some of that cream color over the top, which is just a really light tan color. So sand, it really does make a difference when you have certain things that you start with. We're going to move over to this section over here and kind of keep going, but I'm going to talk about some different stuff a little bit. So let's get some water laid down. How your sand looks will affect how your water looks. How your water looks will affect how your sand looks. So if you kind of like your sand, but something doesn't look right, look at your water and vice versa. Now we're going to pretend that we have a picture that has a little bit of a sunset going on above it. Okay, so now we have this little bit of a sunset. Now where the sand is wet, you can take and you can lay some of that color down on top of that dark. And that looks like it's impossible to see. So I'm going to add some white to it actually, just so that we can see some of that color. Okay. And you can reflect some of that color along the sand as well. Just try to make it so you guys can see that a little bit better. Okay, so you can reflect some of that color down if you want. But then you still need to sort of have a boundary where your sand is going to come in. So I'm going to take some of that cream color, and I'm going to kind of meet up with that other stuff that I put, and then just kind of cover it up a little bit so that it looks like the sand is coming to it. Okay? So now we have wet sand and dry sand. You can also leave, just like in your water, you can leave little ridges where you leave some of the dark stuff in between. To create some depth. And again, I'm not doing completely straight lines because I want it to look, as though it's not completely flat sand. Okay, so that's basically black sand. It is really, really easy. Dark closer to the water, lighten it up, come up with some colors that are sandy, whether it's a sand, a peach, a tan, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, whatever. So now we're going to go down and we're going to work on an area where we don't have any black laid down first. So now we have our sort of blank area, and I'm going to lay down again some water. Again, how your water looks is going to affect how your sand looks. So there's our water line. Then I'm going to take some, this time we'll do a little bit of burnt sienna, and I'm going to bring it right up to where the water is. And this blue that I'm using, I just happen to have it on my palette, but it's an ultramarine blue. And that's a really, really good color for blues that are going to be blended in with other colors, because it's not a overpowering blue, and it's sort of a much easier neutralized sort of blue. Now I'm kneading those two colors together, and then just going back horizontally, but I'm not completely blending it all together because I want it to have some variation. I'm going to grab some of that sand color, kind of let them blend together. And then I'm going to let it get lightened up as I come away from it. A lot of times when I lay down sand, I will do it without having any liquid white or liquid clear or anything. It will be completely dry, because then I get these sort of sketch marks in them like that, and it looks like sand. Just something to keep in mind. With this white canvas, you could also come back in and you could bring in some black. And then lighten it up as you work away. And I'm just grabbing gobs of this stuff again on a dry canvas, and I'm just blending it in. And as it's getting closer, it's lightening up. And then if I wanted to make it look like I have, you know, sand that's much closer, like a sort of a bank of sand, I can come in with a whole different color. And sort of block over that other dark color that was already there. Another color that works really good, again, along the water would be like a burnt umber, or even, what do you call that other color? Van Dyke brown. And really, if you want to know the difference between the two, Van Dyke brown just tends to be more of a transparent, where burnt umber tends to be a more of an opaque sort of brown. But again, it's that same sort of idea where it's dark along the water and then lighter as you come away. I'm going to grab some blue, and I have some white with it because I want it to show up. And I'm just sort of tapping it on there because the stuff is all, everything's a bit wet right now. Once we have that in, you can just blend that blue stuff in, but leave that little bit of a water line. This shows up really well when I can look at it, but I don't think it's translating well onto the camera. So I'm going to grab a knife, actually, and I'm going to saw in some white. And just like that, we have you know, like ripples of water that has come across the beach. Now that I have those two colors sort of blended together, by putting this other white on, it gives me sort of a little bit of a splash. But that is just sort of the general concept of painting sand. It is very easy. Don't let it hold you back. Give it a try. Slap some different colors on. And just think kind of sandy colors in general. I say this about a lot of different things, but that ultramarine blue is a great shadow color. So if you needed to put some shadows into there, you know, to create some depth or whatever in your sand, ultramarine blue is definitely a good color to choose to try to do that with. A lot of times when I put in palm trees, just as a side note, I will definitely have like a defined sort of bank that that palm tree is sitting on. Again, because this canvas is really dry, I can get sort of that sketchy look to the sand where I'm seeing a lot of the canvas coming through. Now that I have that, I can take and I can put in a palm tree. And obviously I would have more sort of detail and stuff in the palm tree. Once you get that in, you can come back in with some lighter colors and sort of highlight the edge of the sand where it's sitting and blend in the trunk a little bit. And sand can be a lot like snow, really, where you can kind of grab a color and pull it out through the snow. But again, as a great shadow color, ultramarine blue works great as a shadow color, even for things like palm trees. Okay guys, I think that's about it. Sand is really simple. Don't overthink sand. Don't let sand sort of get into your head. It sounds funny, but yeah, just don't overthink it. Dry canvas works great. Black to begin with works really great. Dark colors coming into lighter colors, and just play around with it a little bit. I hope that's been helpful. I think sand, again, it was one of those things I was really afraid to touch, and then literally from brush stroke number one, I was like, oh, this is not bad at all. You just need to, again, dark to light, bring in some different colors, play with some shadows. Any questions or comments, guys, put them in the comment section of the video, and I'll do my best to address them. Again, I'm Gabby. Thank you very much for watching. And if you guys could like, share, subscribe, that would be very helpful. Until next time, I really do hope that you guys fall in love with oil painting just as much as I have. Bye now.